Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Isaiah chapter 53, verse 3. We've already covered the first two verses and the last verses in Isaiah 52. So if you haven't seen those yet, go back and watch those as well to figure out more about what's going on here if you're not familiar with the text. But let's look at what it says in the New International Version here, first of all. It says, "He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hid their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem." But was Jesus really rejected and despised by mankind, let alone the entire Jewish population? No, there was only a handful of people in the entire story that didn't really like Jesus. A couple of Pharisees who were going, "Who is this guy blaspheming like this?" And they began to thinking about what they might do to Jesus. Just using Luke's gospel alone, it tells us that all the people are amazed. Looking at chapter 2, it says that after Jesus is born, shepherds get a visit from angels and they're amazed. Okay, and they go tell the people and they're all amazed, and Simon's amazed, and Anna sings and praises. Jesus grows in wisdoms and finds favor with God and man. And then we have the line about people hiding their faces from him. Nobody hid their faces from Jesus. All over the Gospels, it says in Luke chapter 6:19, the entire crowd was trying to touch him because of power coming from him and healing them all. That's probably the only reason they were hanging around. If he wasn't healing anybody, they'd be like, "Hey, screw this guy, I'm going home," right? So they wanted something from Jesus, apparently. Chapter 7, the Pharisees and experts in the law rejected God's purpose for themselves. So they rejected him there. Ooh. Oh, he must be the Messiah. Have you ever been rejected? Okay, of course. It's not uncommon. It doesn't mean you're the Messiah. Now, there is one point in Luke chapter 9, verse 22. This is after Jesus cast out some demons, and the author has Jesus saying himself, "The Son of Man must suffer many things. He must be rejected by the elders." Oh my God, there's that word, rejected. That's what it says here in the New Testament. He was rejected by the elders, chief priests, and the scribes. Rejected. Oh, and he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. Okay, he must be rejected. He's got to be. No choice. As far as the Jews hating Jesus, there's even in Luke chapter 11, a Pharisee invites him over to dinner, and what does Jesus do? He starts berating the guy in his own home with all this woe to you stuff, right? So naturally, he'd be offended. He'd probably kick him out. And let's talk about the line there where it says, "As if we hid our faces from him." Did anybody hide their faces from Jesus? Where in the Gospels does it say that people hid their faces from him? They were always following around for him, chasing after him, waiting for him when he got back. Even when he was being crucified, nobody hid their faces from him. They stood there and watched, even his own mother. Okay, he was not alone. He was not isolated. Whatever translation they try to give to Jesus here, it just doesn't seem to fit. But all of those things do fit as Israel, don't they? I mean, when's the last time you checked that the Jews weren't being persecuted somewhere in the world? You know, if it's not the Holocaust, the pogroms, and the exiles, for centuries upon centuries, Jews have been kicked around from one town, have their books and their synagogues burned, and being accused of atrocious things like drinking blood from children. All this nonsensical stuff comes from who? From the church, the people trying to spread Jesus. Yeah, right there at the very end, Luke chapter 23, verse 48, 49, all the people who gathered for the spectacle saw what happened, and all those who knew Jesus stood there at a distance watching these things. In fact, the only person hiding their faces from other people in the story of Luke is Jesus himself. Okay, after his resurrection, he appears to the two guys and the disciples on the road to Emmaus. Remember that? And they don't recognize him. Why? Because Jesus twisted and shape-shifted into a different creature. You know, if you look at the history of the Jews after they were exiled from their homes in Jerusalem and Israel during the Roman exile after in the 2nd century? Let's jump ahead to just the 12th and 13th and 14th centuries. You know what happened in the 12th century, or the 13th century? That was called the Edict of Milan, I believe. I'm not sure. You might want to look that one up. But 1290, They were exiled, and they weren't able to come back into England until 1657. And it's during this time, towards the end of that, when they first wrote the King James Version of the Bible. Think about that. There were no Jews involved in the translation of the Hebrew into English in England for the King James Version of the Bible. I mentioned all the Crusades, not only the Christian Crusades, but the Islamic ones as well. So Jews have always been rejected and despised and exiled, and they want you to think that just because their fairy tale character in their story of Jesus had a couple bad days at the end of his life, that he's the Messiah now. So we know it's not talking about Jesus, but what about Israel? How does this apply to Israel and the Jews? Well, let's have a look here in Isaiah chapter 49. Holy One of Israel, to him who was despised and abhorred by the nations. Some translations say nation, singular. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 15. For I behold, I have made you small among the nations, despised among man. So it's talking about Israel there. Okay, Isaiah chapter 60, verse 15. Whereas you've been forsaken and despised. Okay. And notice all of this is in the past tense. Okay. Because it's a Messianic prophecy about something that hasn't happened yet. And when it happens, the nations are going to look back and go, in the past tense, okay? If it was about Jesus 2,000 years ago, don't you think it would say, this will happen when Jesus comes, okay? Not has happened. Jesus didn't fulfill any prophecies. He's not the servant. He's not the Son of God. He's not even a Messiah or a king or anything like that. He's just a fictional character in a book sent to test people to see if they're paying attention to the Word of God.